I'm trying to start a show.
And all the visitors, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Wait, come on.
And peace be upon the host.
The host will be with you in about 2 minutes, God willing. Assalamu alaikum to you all. Can you hear me clearly?
Alaikum assalam. Yes, sir.
Alaikum assalam. Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask Instructor Ezekiel Abdullah to open us up with Al-Fatiha.
Yes. With the name of Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, all praise is due to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of all systems of knowledge, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, master of this day of judgment. You alone do we serve, and you alone do we beseech for help and aid. Show us the straight way, the way of those whom you have bestowed your favors and your civilizing grace, not upon those who are inundated by anger, nor upon those who go far, far, far astray.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so I'm going to mute all of the participants, and I see a couple of our guests from the Interfaith webinar have joined us. I'm going to ask our dear brother Ted Bernstein if he would like to say a few words. And all you would have to do is unmute your mic and speak or greet us so that we know that you are what we call in the house.
We are indeed in the house. Thank you so much for your welcome. Assalamu alaikum, shalom, and
Assalam, shalom alaikum.
It was a delight to meet you just a few days ago at the Jam and All session on racism in religion, and the antidote to it being proper understanding of the sacred texts. And I'm delighted to be here and get to know you and your community better. I look forward to building relationship and many ongoing productive collaborations. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Is there anyone else who was a part of that Interfaith webinar outside of this class who would like to give us greetings or make a statement?
My name is Kathy Leonard. I'm also active in the Jam and All Interfaith group, and we were absolutely delighted to have you on the roundtable discussion. I'm sorry about the link being a bit of a problem, but we're going to try to get a recording of that you can share, and I know you'll review some of that tonight in your presentation. I thank you so very much for your welcome and for giving us the opportunity to be present for your teaching tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you. It was indeed an honor to meet and greet you and to address you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us this evening. Is there anyone else? I still see names that I don't recognize. Feel free to open up your mic and give us greetings. You'd have to unmute your phone. Okay, so we're going to give you that same opportunity at the end of today's discourse to ask any questions. In fact, the Q&As tonight are going to be strictly related to our guests and whatever questions they may have. We plan to end at the 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time mark. Hopefully all of you can stay with us for these next 2 hours. I guarantee you're going to be getting some information that is going to be worth your while, and it will be worth contemplating and even sharing with those who are interested in this particular level of, I would call it scriptural information on the most part, but it's scriptural information that is designed to strengthen our social bonds as human beings first and foremost. Forget the labels, just as human beings. So that is what we're going to be addressing tonight. Thank you once again for being with us. I see Bilal Yassin El Amin. Not sure if you got my message about saying just a few words about your participation in Monday's webinar. Bilal, are you with us? All right.
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Assalamu alaikum.
good. Okay. Alaikum assalam. Thank you.
I just got in. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, if you will, just give us what your impressions were pertaining to last Monday's Interfaith webinar, sponsored by Jam.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I was very, very much impressed by that meeting. Praise be to Allah that we had that opportunity. And I was impressed by the interest. There was genuine interest in what you had to say. And I was impressed by how much you said in such a short time. And of course, you're very good at that in a way. And I was also very impressed by the way we were able to break off into groups and then came back together. I'd never seen that done before. And how friendly the group leaders were, and everybody on the program was very friendly, very open. And I thank my brother Suleiman. I was given an opportunity to speak, and as I so often do, I dump on people rather than using spoons. Using the spoonful. I was talking too long, and he brotherly and very diplomatically told me, "Hey, what you're saying is good, but shut down. Other people have something to say." So we appreciate that, Brother Suleiman. And we hope we have the opportunity to do that again. We need to do that. We need to come together. All believers, we are one. And we see that happening every day in our own life in different ways. We're seeing it, we're seeing it happen, and we just say to ourselves, praise be to Allah. We find ourselves saying that every day, many times, praise be to Allah, where we see the manifestation of his power and his oneness and our coming together. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you, sir. All right. Last chance now. If there's anyone who was a part of last Monday's JAM webinar, Interfaith webinar, this would be a good time for you to at least introduce yourself. You get a chance again at the end of my discourse to ask me any questions pertaining to what I have said tonight. But if you just want to let us know who you are, or you may not be able to stay for the full 2 hours, this would be a good chance for us to know that you're in the house. I'm letting some others in now, so we'll give them just a moment. Okay. So I'm going to assume that everyone else is either shy or with their pens and papers in front of them, ready to go, ready to take some notes. So I'm going to bring up my notes as I normally do. Thank you once again. And we greet you also once again with the greetings of peace. In the Arabic language, of course, we say Assalamu alaikum. In the Hebrew language, we would say Shalom aleichem. And in the English language, we would simply say peace. And I'm happy that everyone here is in a state of peace and ready to bring their pieces into this tremendous and precious human puzzle. It's called a human life. It's a puzzle. We have to continue to strive to figure out where the pieces go. And we'll know it because we'll just instantly lock in like we're doing tonight, especially with our guests. So once again, thank you. I'm going to bring up my notes. Give me a moment. I'm still technologically challenged in that way. But you'd figure after 13 semesters, I would have figured this out by now. So I'm going to ask people, if you want to turn your cameras off, that's fine for the duration of the information. But when we return, I'm going to ask that as many of you as possible turn your cameras back on so that we can see you, and so that just the vibrancy of many of your faces that I'm seeing, the smiling faces, the smiling eyes, is actually a contribution to the very thing that we're looking to establish. The camaraderie that we're looking to establish, it's an assistant when we see your face. God created these faces for a reason. So we're going to take full advantage of what God has created. So my face will disappear while I'm delivering the notes. If you need to go fix your face, as some women say, let me go fix my face, then you take time to do that. And I'll see you in another hour or so. And inshallah, we're going to open up for Q's and A's. Again, first and foremost from our guests. And if they are completed in terms of what they needed to ask, then we'll open it up if we have time for some of you regulars. Again, thank you all for being here. We have quite a few people and we're ready to start. Let me go find my notes. There we go. Okay. All right, Ezekiel, just to give me another sound check. Let me know that I'm coming through loud and clear.
Yes, sir. 5 by 5.
All right. That's security talk, y'all, if you didn't know, 5 by 5. But it's also a statement out of the hadith of Muhammad the Prophet, who said, take charge of 5 before 5 become your undoing. And it was a reference also to the activation of your 5 basic senses. Pay attention before those same senses become your undoing because of you not allowing them to graduate. It's a beautiful thing when you understand language. Let me, okay. All right, here we go. So let me introduce you to that wonderful Nunetics logo to the right of the screen. That is our official logo. And if you're not familiar with the word nunetics, it's a word that I've actually coined, and it is from the Arabic letter system. Their letter N, as in Nancy, is called a nun. And it's the same in the Hebrew language. And nun in both languages, as a letter, it means seed. That's one of its many meanings. It means S-E-E-D, seed. And what I've discovered is that each and every letter of the Arabic letter system operates as a seed, in that those letters contain what is called ideation, meaning that God has packed a whole bunch of ideas into each and every one of those letters, in the same way that he has packed the construct for what we see out here in the trees and the grass and other things that take seeds, including animals and humans. He has packed information within us that is designed to express itself when it is put under the right conditions and in the right environment. So these letters that we're reading, especially in our respective scriptures, are letters that can actually give us layers and layers and layers of meanings and understandings if we put them in the right environment and give them what they need to grow. So don't look at your respective dictionaries and thesauruses and lexicons as the end of learning or the end of the meanings for words. They are not. The human brain was created to continue to grow. And as long as it's continuing to grow, it's also going to continue to come into more and more layers of understanding, in the same way that we're discovering more and more of the universe as we continue to live as humans on Earth. They're telling us that the universe itself is expanding. Well, that's indicative of what God has done for the human brain and the human intellect also, as well as the human sensitivities. All of creation was intended to expand and embrace and come into new knowledge. And the more new knowledge we come into, the more we're convinced that creation is one. In Al-Islam, it's called the Tawheed, and it represents the way in which all of these differences are also related. Let me just make sure that everyone coming in is muted so that we don't have the feedback. There we go. Thank you all. I hope you brought your thinking caps with you. This will be a good time to put them on. All right. And also, if you have your seat belt, you're going to need those also. Just lock in so that you don't end up floating into the next room. And you'll be good. Now, our subject for this evening, and I'm going to ask that everyone keep their microphones closed so that we'll have a nice, clear recording or set of recordings. I'm recording this on my audio also, so you'll have the webinar recording as well as an audio, crystal clear recording of the audio once this has been completed. Our subject for this evening is people of the book uniting upon compatible scriptural language. People of the book, which is a phrase from the Quran, uniting upon compatible scriptural language. Historically speaking, we like to argue and fuss and fight back and forth with each other about things in our respective scriptures that are different. God gave the covenant to me, not to you. You know, your book says pray this way, mine says pray the other way. And, you know, we nitpick and we go through our respective scriptures, and we tend to want to find the differences that we can use as battle axes against each other. And that's not what scripture was intended to do. Scripture is revealed in order to provide upgrades and continuous flows of information according to the development of human beings themselves. Human beings are under an evolutionary principle. Now, I'm not talking Darwinism. I'm just talking nature, Mother Nature. Mother Nature has included within her teaching, she teaches us, nature teaches us, and she has included within that teaching lessons for our proper growth and development, not necessarily as physical or physically evolving people. There's a lot of argument around that, but we're talking now about the evolution of the more important part of the human makeup, and that is what is taking place inside of us. What's taking place in us instinctively? What's taking place in us emotionally? What is taking place in us rationally, morally, see, spiritually? What is taking place in these areas of human development that are invisible? We call that the invisible you within. That's what Imam Wadaduddin Muhammad introduced us to as language, that the true human is the invisible you within. So all of this fuss and fight and all of this argument about external stuff like the color of your skin, that's a moot point now. Once you understand what the real human actually is. All of this fussing and fighting about where you were born in the world and, you know, the favored because of a geography that you were born on, that's a moot point now when you understand that the true human that's going to be judged is the one that's taking place inside of you. So if that one that is inside of you was born in a particular quote unquote holy land, but the person within you has not been acting that holy, then you're up that creek, that very famous creek that people talk about, because it's not about being born in a particular land. You're born in a land, you're going to die in a land or a different land. And that's going to be the journey of this physical body. But there's another journey inside of us that we need to be paying more attention to. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. I'm feeling so good this evening, and I hope you're feeling the same. So I'm going to begin by introducing some words from the Torah, what Christians would call the Old Testament, but this is the original language that the Old Testament was delivered in. And I want to show you how similar these words are to what we already know as the Arabic language, or the language of Arabia, as it's called. And the first line of the Torah, and remember, this is the book of the Jewish people, the people who speak the Hebrew language. And many of them are familiar with Proto-Hebrew, meaning the Hebrew that developed the Hebrew that you know of today as modern Hebrew. You know, all languages go through that process of development. So this particular verse, which is verse 1 of the Torah, says, Bereshit et Elohim bara hashamayim et haratz. Haretz, pardon me. And it is translated into English as in the beginning, God, and the word for God is Elohim. The actual word for God is El, and the him is a plural suffix, just like Muslims would have hum as a plural suffix. So many of the religious scholars have had an issue with the presentation of this word in the Torah because they say that it means many gods. And the Jewish people are people who pride themselves in presenting themselves as monotheists, people who believe in one God. So what is this many gods? And people use that to bash the Jews over the head with, and the people who are arguing back and forth are lacking a very particular perspective that I'm going to introduce to you today. So as you see here, I have interpreted Elohim as God in all of his divine attributes. And when we say his, let's get that out of the way. We're not talking about a male. We're not talking about a man sitting somewhere in the sky, or we're not talking about the male gender as that gender is portrayed on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. That's not what we're talking about when we say God. We're talking about a force that is responsible for the creation of gender, male and female, and anything else that might be out there that we haven't discovered yet. We don't know. We do know that humanity is based primarily upon the male and female gender. And when scripture calls God by these male gender pronouncements or designations, it's not talking about God as a man. And that's a real big mess up that religious people have made, historically speaking. And it has caused an unnecessary focus to be centered upon the male species amongst humans. And it has given the male species an artificial one-up on the female species, or the female gender. Because if you think that God is a male, why would you not extend that to include human males as being superior to everything else? God is superior to all of us. Human males must be superior to all humans. And that's another mistake that was made. But that's the issue that created a patriarchal type of focus for humans. And we began to denigrate the female in order to raise high the male. All religions, especially in the last, I'd say 6,000-7,000 years, have been guilty of that particular mistake. I call it a mistake because we're born into it. We don't know. Now, Muslims might say, well, we don't have that in Al-Islam. No, well, when you read the Quran, you read where Allah says we, and he's referring to himself. You read where Allah says us. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Certainly, we have created the human being in the most excellent mode. Well, who is that we? Is that plural gods? You already know it's no. The answer is no. So you need to investigate other people's language systems more before you just willy-nilly accuse them of worshiping a plurality of gods. It's not talking about a plurality of gods. It's talking about how God operates in all of his attributes. Attributes that humans are supposed to be able to identify with as humans. Even ourselves as individuals, we're one person, but we have many different types of personalities and many different ways that we introduce ourselves to people based on who we're dealing with. When you're at work, you have a particular personality. It might be serious because if your boss catches you, as my boss used to say, he called it futzing around. He said, if your boss catches you futzing around, he's not going for that. He's paying you to be there for a particular purpose. And if you're not fulfilling that purpose, you're going to have a problem out of that boss. But when 5 o'clock hits or the weekend hits, like the OJ said, living for the weekend, you leave there and you go to party down or wherever you go. And you hang a little bit looser than you would when you're at work. That's a whole nother personality. When you leave the party and you go home to your family, now you take on another personality. You're not as silly out there with the strangers, I hope, as you are with your little children. You don't like to rub your head. No, man, you let my friend out there rub my head and mess up my afro. I'm gonna have a problem. All right. So we have different personalities. Well, in that same way, God is expressing this concept in that very same manner. And that is that he's one, but he has multiple ways of expressing that oneness. Also, the creation itself is one, but it has many different ways of expressing its personality, if you will. So those who study the so-called zodiac, they see it as being divided into 12. So we have these different discriminations and these different seemingly discrepancies that we're looking at. But in the end, all of it represents aspects of one continuous and contiguous system. And we're talking now about how the universe has provided for us systems of knowledge. But they're on different levels, they address different concerns, but it's still all one. So I hope that was able to clear that up. And in the beginning, which is this word Bereshit, Elohim created the skies and the earth. Bara is the word for create. We have it in the attribute of God called El Bari, the creator, the one who creates from the very beginning. And Hashamayim is what the Quran would give you as Samawat, meaning all of the skies. The Quran speaks about the skies as being 7 in total. It's not a number like 7 that you count on your hands and your fingers. It's speaking about a plurality of skies. We don't know how many layers of sky. We know that there are 7 basic layers of atmosphere, and we call them by different spheres: atmosphere, troposphere, et cetera. And we know there are 7 of those that science has named. What goes beyond that, human beings still have yet to discover. So it's the same word as samawat, et haaretz. Haaretz. This ha here is a definite article in Hebrew. It serves the same purpose as the Arabic prefix al, like we say al-Islam, the Islam, al-Quran, the Quran, right? El-Kitab, the book. That's what ha is in the Hebrew construct. It means definite article. So this is the earth, aretz, earth. It's the same as our word ard in the Quran for earth. All of these words are related. Aretz, Hebrew, ard, Arabic, earth, English. They're all consonantally connected and they're all speaking to the same phenomenon. Now, the Hebrew word bereshit means in the beginning. However, it contains the word resh, R-E-S-H, resh, as you can see here. Resh, right in the middle of bereshit, resh, all right? And resh means head or summit. That's why they're using it and translating it as the beginning. When we talk about the beginning of the year, we could also talk about it as being the head of the year. All right. And it is a reference to what should be the leading influences in the world. Your head is what leads your body. It leads the way for your activities. Your head is doing that. And I spoke a little bit on that past Monday concerning the Hebrew word and the Arabic word for head. And we'll make that connection now. This word resh is the Hebrew word for head. And in Arabic, it would be rais, rais for head. And they both mean the leading influence. So it's no wonder that the English language came into the word race, R-A-C-E, to represent these differences in phenotype, in complexions or skin colors, and these other things. Most of, by the way, are actually artificial in terms of their realness, you know, because if I say that there's a particular black race, for instance, or that there's a white race, do you know how many divisions are in those two categories right there? For us to say black people, there are people in the country of India who are blue black, people in Africa who are what they call blue black. Black is my black shoe, but they're not called the black people. The people in India are not called the black people, but they're blacker in color or darker in color than the many people who now call themselves African American. So race, as we have come to understand it, is a misnomer. As far as I'm concerned, you can draw your own conclusion. But for me, it's a misnomer. And it is a word that terribly underdefines what a human being is. Because the last I remember categorizing things by color was in grade school, kindergarten and grade school. When I said, hand me the red crayon. And I had so much joy in taking the red and the yellow and the green crayon and making my little picture of whatever it was supposed to be. It brought me joy to see the differences in those colors back then. But I celebrated the differences then. Why now, once I reach junior high and high school and college, why am I seeing those same divisions in color as being something superior to whatever it is I'm considering myself as a color? So race is a problem. But it's interesting that God would leave that connection in history to let us know that race is all in your head. Race, these differences in race, that's all in your head, right? So here's the real race. It's right here in the Torah. Bereshit et Elohim bara hashamayim et haraat. That's the real race. The real race is in the Bereshit, the Bereshit, in the beginning. In the beginning, the race was for an influence to be introduced into the human world that would be the cause for that internal evolution that I spoke about a little bit earlier. It's the race for human excellence. The Quran says strive, and then they put in brackets, as in a race, towards all that is useful for mankind, humankind. Again, I'm trying to extricate the sexism out of English as I go along when I notice it. Mankind has come to mean men and their kind, when in reality, in the beginning of that phrase is the word man that once referred to both males and females. That's why we say mankind, because the female is a man also when you understand the etymology of the word. She has it in her title, woman, woman, one man. She's a type of man, but it's just that she's a man with a womb. So they called her womb man, the one who is responsible for the new life that is to continuously generate. So man does not mean male, is the next point. Man refers to the ability in a human being to think and use their mind. Man means mind. It does not mean flesh and blood. It means mind, and it has everything to do with the way we think and reason and come to decisions and emote our feelings, etc. So let's go back to the statement again. In the beginning, God, in all of his divine attributes, created the skies and the earth. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the leading influences in the world. The leading influences in the world are coming from above, from the heavens, so to speak, the skies, and also from our home called the earth. And it is not a reference to activities taking place in the sex organs. There's nothing to do with the sex organs in this first line of the Torah. Nothing. Has nothing to do with any region beneath your heart. It has nothing to do with your belly, your stomach, nothing. It's dealing specifically with the head and the heart. The head reference is this word skies. And the heart reference is this word earth. In fact, if you take the E off the front and put it on the back, if you take the H off of the back, and put it on the front of this word, it will be the word heart. Earth is an anagram of heart. And they designed it like that because whoever the linguists were who established this language, they understood it and they were confident, so much so that they put it in the construct of the very word itself, that there's something about the earth that is compatible with or similar to the earth and how it operates. When the Bible speaks about the lion laying down with the lamb, this is what it is referring to also. We look at these things too literally sometimes, and we're looking for a day when the lion will be laying down with the lamb. Well, I saw that in a zoo, believe it or not, about 5 years ago. That lion was so well fed that the lamb and the giraffe and all of these other animals that normally the lion, or at least the lioness, would be after for food, that lion's belly was so full that he wouldn't, all the lamb could do was just move out of his way. Yeah, get away from me, leave me alone, But if he got hungry again and they didn't feed him on time, guess who's going to be the next lunch? It's going to be that lamb or some other animal, right? So that phenomenon of a lion laying down with a lamb happens now. It's not something to look forward to as a prophecy or something. The prophecy to look forward to in what scripture is addressing, and as scripture is addressing so many wonderful ideas, but they're coated in symbols, symbolism, allegories, that level of instruction. So the lion laying down with the lamb is your neocortex brain, your thinking brain. It houses the intellect. And the lion is the limbic brain, which houses your emotions or your sentiments. And there has been a scheme afoot by the social schemers that has been designed to separate one from the other. You're either going to be a hard and cold rationalist who will do things because the brain has figured out that this is the best case scenario for how it should operate, but it doesn't consult the emotions. That's what racism is. It's a rational type of logic that does not consult true emotionality, meaning, you know, in your heart of hearts, you shouldn't be thinking like that, you shouldn't be feeling like that, but you have dismissed your emotions and have asked your emotions to get up and walk away from the table when it comes to these decisions. I need to hang somebody tonight. I need to light a body on fire tonight. I need to go into someone's home and wreak havoc upon a family tonight. I don't have time to consider what my heart has to say about it. See, so a separation takes place, is the point, between the rational mind, the thinking mind, the judgmental mind, and the emotional connection to those decisions that are taking place in the mind. So what the scripture is suggesting as something to come is actually the unity between the thinking brain and the emotional brain. I want you to consider what I'm saying. You can walk away with your own conclusion. I'm just letting you know what I think and feel about it. Now, the limbic brain lies just beneath the neocortex. See, they're already lying together, theoretically and literally speaking. The limbic brain lies just underneath the neocortex brain. You'll see a picture of it in a moment. And your world and my world, our world, will have peace when both of these brains and what they do learn to operate in synchronicity. When they learn to operate with respect for each other's capabilities, that's when the life itself comes into peace. This is the lion laying down with the lamb. This is also the skies working in synchronicity with the earth that God created in the beginning. It's supposed to be like that. It was intended to be like that. This is also the awakened Adam working in concert with an obedient Eve. Giving you a chance to digest that. All of these scenarios are speaking conceptually to the same thing. The coming together of two important parts of what constitutes the true human life. So here you see a picture of what's called the triune brain, the brain as it has been divided into three parts. And they say that evolutionarily speaking, that the first brain to develop was the survival brain. This red portion here, the survival brain. Look at what it does. It reacts automatically to the environment. This brain is designed to keep you here, especially on the biological level. Everything that needs to be done to ensure your physical survival to begin with is calculated within this survival brain. It's also called the reptilian brain. It is also called the R complex brain. Growing out of that, just above that is what's called the limbic brain. And it's also known as the emotional brain because it controls how you feel, and it is also responsible for the things you remember. And it interacts with others. So there's an element of socialization that is connected to this brain. So all mammals have this brain in charge of their life, including the human mammal, except that we've been gifted with an extra added bonus when it comes to the third brain that I'm about to mention. But this brain, this limbic system, is also called the mammalian brain, because every mammal, whether human or other animals, and a mammal, of course, are creatures that are born out of a womb, W-O-M-B. They're born out of a sac, a womb, and therefore they're to be considered warm-blooded creatures, unlike the reptiles that have this brain. They have the R complex. It's called the reptilian brain. But the reptile is called a cold-blooded creature. So there's the cold-blooded creature that this, and it has to be cold-blooded, because if it's going to ensure your survival, there are going to be things that it's not going to be able to consider. It won't be able to consider your feelings. When you're hungry, it's going to force you to find some food to eat, to digest, and it'll take care of it. Once you put it in your mouth, this brain takes over and it delivers it into the gut, right? And your nervous system and all of those other things begin to act on your behalf without your conscious participation. That's what your survival brain is doing. It regulates your sleeping, your wakefulness, all of those good things that keep us here. The need to eat, the need to drink, all of those things that keep us here. The blinking of your eyes are regulated by the reptilian brain, because you have to do it. The growing of your hair out of your head and other parts of the body are regulated not by your conscious mind. It's not regulated by how you feel. You can't feel yourself into an afro or what do they call that? Whatever, dippity-doo type hairstyle. You can't just say I'm feeling like when I wake up tomorrow, I should have this particular style. It doesn't work like that, because the growing of your hair is based upon what's happening instinctively in your body. All right. You can consciously choose food to eat, but you can't do anything about it once it's in your mouth and down the throat. Your job is over. Now your reptilian brain has taken over, and it's going to do with that food what's necessary for your survival. You see how that goes? All right. So that red part is the reptilian brain. This blue section here is the emotional brain, the limbic brain, also called the mammalian brain, and it's responsible for emotions and memory. Those are the two things you need to remember: emotions and memory. And of course, you can see in the word remember, separated right here, RE dash member, because what it does is bring all of the members back. The members become scattered. You're picking and choosing in the thinking brain. But when you need to remember something, you have to go into that chamber or into that memory bank and pull out what it is you need to remember. Form it again. When you're finished with it, you put it back in the bank and you don't think about it. It stays in the subconscious region of the brain. So the emotional brain is also the subconscious brain, or the subconscious mind. The survival brain is the unconscious mind. And this rational brain that we're about to talk about represents the conscious mind, the thinking mind that's taking place in what's called the neocortex. Neo means a new, and it means the new covering or the new cortex. This is what is responsible for our ability to think and make rational decisions. It's creative, it's responsive, rationally responsive. You feel like buying a car, okay, that's in your feelings. Your rational neocortex brain starts to figure out what kind of car, where to go for the car, how much the car should cost, how much you can spend on the car. Is the car comfortable? Can it accommodate your entire family, or is this just for you, buddy? The irrational brain has to go through that exercise. So all of these three layers or levels of the brain are working simultaneously, and they're working in harmony with each other. They're not enemies to each other. Now, I'm jumping ahead in terms of the concept that I'm presenting to you. If God, the creator, we say Allah, created these three basic levels of your brain, although operating on different levels of activity, he created all of them to work together and to service the needs of each other. They all have their specific roles. Well, how come the people of the book, How come Muslims, Jews, and Christians can't work as effectively together? There's already a blueprint for it in your biology. We'll get into that a little bit further. I just wanted to kind of tease you with where it is we're going. Now, in the beginning of the human creation, God ordained that the human intellect, with its precious properties, be the ruler in creation. I'm going to repeat that. In the beginning, that original race that I just told you about, the race for human excellence, in the beginning of that human creation, God, the creator, ordained that the human intellect, what we just went over, the human intellect, with a special emphasis on the neocortex, thinking and decision-making brain. God ordained that that human intellect with its precious properties be the ruler in creation. He did not ordain that a particular race, as we know race, be the ruler, the de facto ruler over all people on earth and in the universe. That's foolish. He designed the human intellect and its curiosities and its capacities to be the ruler in creation. And we'll understand what that word ruler means later on. In the Quran, that human is given the dignified title Khalifa, which they translate as caretaker. And Allah says in the Quran, but I left the verse out because it's not necessary. I should have taken this out also. But it is the section of the Quran. If you want to look it up, it is in Surah 30, Ayah 30, or chapter 30, verse 30, where Allah speaks to something called the, no, pardon me, that's speaking to the fitra. The Khalifa is a different section, but it's not necessary for where we need to go. Now, in both the Bible and the Quran, this ruler is given the name Adam. That's what's important to understand. The Khalifa is connected to the idea of the creation of Adam. And Adam, as a word, we're going to get into some etymology now. Adam, that word means spirit in the blood. Let me explain it. Adam should actually be split into two sections. There is this sound, ah, which every human infant makes upon entering this world from its mother's belly. Ah, I don't care if you're in China, Israel, Bermuda, any part of Africa or Asia. That human baby, don't care what his eyes look like, don't care what his skin complexion comes out as, doesn't matter what his hair texture is, that human baby has this sound in common with all other human babies, not a kangaroo, not a tortoise. I'm not talking about those babies. I'm talking about what God has done for the human baby as a sign, an instructing sign for the intellect. They say, ah, as a cry most of the time when they exit the womb. And that cry is actually speaking to an activation that is taking place in the lungs of that newborn baby. That newborn baby's system is no longer tied to the mother's insides. The umbilical cord is cut, and the baby has to now breathe on her own, on his own. They have to breathe on their own. So the lungs become activated. The mucus plugs are removed from the nostrils, and the baby now is in a very weak state of independence. And I say weak because if you leave it there on its own, it'll die. All right, so it's not totally independent. No one actually is. But in this case, it is still intrinsically dependent on its mother for milk, for comfort, warmth, for security. All right, so that's a primal cry from every human being. Now let's investigate this word dam. In both Hebrew and Arabic, this word has to do with blood. It has to do with a lot of things, but dam is blood. Imam W.D. Muhammad told us once that blood is a symbol of the social life of humans. In the same way that blood needs to flow throughout the body, especially, and service every portion of the body, the large organs all the way down to the tippy pinky toe. Blood has to circulate there, different amounts for different parts, but nevertheless, those parts need the nutrition that blood provides in order to continue what it is they've been designed to do. So dam means blood. And in the same way that that blood flows, the life of human society, when it comes to our social engagement with each other, has to flow in exactly the same way. That we have to socially serve or service humanity. I'm going for the broader picture from the jump. We have to service our families, of course. We should look towards servicing the needs of our neighbors. All of our scriptures speak to these things. But the eventual service is to be paid to what you can actually contribute to all human beings who share your image as a human being. And again, that's mostly an internal image. So when you put representing the spirit together with the dam, we actually have a sentence: spirit in the blood. Do you know that you're in your blood, there's a force, there's a life force, there's a spirit in your blood. There's oxygen in the blood. We talk about air. You can't live without air. So air is doing a particular thing in the blood. The blood itself is divided into portions. One portion of it is powdery, and the other portion is liquid. See, all of these things are what the Quran calls ayat, or instructing signs, that most people, according to Allah in the Quran, don't pay attention to. They don't heed the signs in simple creation, things that we know and see every day, but we just look at them aesthetically. That's beautiful. That sunrise, that sunset, that moon waxing and waning. That's beautiful. You see how God did that? Yeah, but he didn't just do it for you to say that's beautiful. I'm sure that the animals that come out and howl at the moon and all of that and romp around in the sunshine and the warmth, I'm sure they also see it as being something emotionally pleasant. But they're not seeing it as something that's registering on their animal intellect. They're not making decisions because of what they learned from the sunrise, knowing that there was a sunrise inside of them also, that there was a waxing and a waning moon inside of them also. There's the rush of waters, the collision of the waters inside of them also. There's the building up of the fire of their own intellect and its ability to light the way. So all of these things are operating inside of the human being also. There's your material nature and the things that your material nature calls on in order to keep it here and keep it prospering. So earth is in you, water is in you, meaning emotions. Fire is in you, the fire of your intellect. And the earth or the land is in you, that material establishment that we just talked about. I missed one. The air, yeah, the air, spirit, the spiritual nature. All of these four elements are in you. Now, that spirit has to be, or is best expressed through the environment, the social environment. So Adam represents the directional influences that are created in us by God that are to be expressed socially. They are to be expressed socially in the dam, in the blood. I'm trying to take my time so that you can grasp this, but again, I will give you information at the end of this discourse so that you'll be able to get a copy of what we've spoken about today and examine it further and more meticulously. Suffice it to say for now that Adam represents the combination of spirit, the spiritual nature, and the social nature. That's the human. Not the geography, not the race, so-called race, the spiritual nature and your social nature. That's you as a human, simply put. And if you're not addressing the things that elevate and evolve your spiritual nature and that elevate and evolve your social nature, if you're not addressing those issues, you're not addressing the true human being. You're addressing economics and politics probably, but you're not addressing how human beings grow and develop. So it means spirit in the blood. Now, true human life is represented in the combination of how spiritual influences affect social interaction. Do you know that the manipulative science of subliminal seduction, that I'm sure all of you have studied or read about, subliminal seduction, Wilson Bryan Key has the best book on it, or Brian Wilson Key, I believe is the order. Yeah. A book called Subliminal Seduction, how human beings are influenced to buy things that they wouldn't ordinarily buy, or even behave in certain ways that they would not ordinarily behave. But because invisible influences affected their spirit, it also had a toll, or took a toll, on how they evolved socially, or how they interacted with others socially. So we can say that this idea of racism that we've been discussing now is also a result of subliminal seduction, how we have been seduced spiritually to stray away and contaminate the social interaction that should have been normal and natural among human beings. Allah says in the Quran that He created us to be curious about each other. And one interpreter says, and not to despise each other. So the nature in us is to be curious about each other. You say, well, I don't think so. I've read about prehistoric people and they hitting each other in the head with clubs and all, but then they were gruesome. They were out of order. That's what you think. You need to go back and study some of the works of Margaret Mead and others who study that area of history. And they're going to tell you that some of these so-called primitive, we should just call them primal and not primitive, because of the connotations connected to primitive. We should just say that they were primal societies. There are societies that still exist almost in their raw form, like they did thousands of years ago, that don't even have words in their lexicon for hate, for these kinds of differences between people. They have many words for love, but some of them don't have any words for hate. And they have maintained the original social order, and their social order was peaceful. You might see them wearing a grass skirt or something, or, you know, but that doesn't mean that they are primitive as we think about primitive. And those are some of the first human societies. So the first human societies were natural societies. And the more broader those societies, or those tribes, those people, the more broader they began to travel, they ran into the challenge of who these other people are who don't necessarily look like them, act like them, eat like them, fish like them, walk like them, speak like them. Now that's a challenge. So Allah says in the Quran, He created us to be curious concerning each other, but not for purposes of despising each other, for purposes of opening up in the intellect the same exact thing that is opened up in the intellect of the newborn baby: curiosity. Curiosity is the burning within that leads us to want to know more about what it is we're facing. Now, when perverted influences are introduced, the social life then comes under frequencies which lower the quality of our social concerns. Did you know that the quality of your social concerns could be lifted or sent downwards? The quality can rise You talk about a high quality of something, right? Or it can become diminished. When these perverted influences coming in through these subliminal doorways, when they are introduced into the social life through artificial means, when they begin to influence your life to want to just have what other people have, regardless of how you get it, when they convince you that the world was created for you and other people should just be your footstool in the world, they convince you that you are the best and the best of the best, and therefore all of this belongs to you under God. And some have even said that God belongs solely to them. He's the God of our people. These other people, I'm not quite sure how they got here. All I know is that they're supposed to serve us and serve our interests. See, that's a perverted spiritual influence that have come into the people. That's the that spirit in Adam that allowed for the dam or the blood, the social nature, to become contaminated. And therefore, the blood can no longer service society because it has become corrupted. So when we have these conversations concerning race, concerning sexism, concerning classism, and these other isms, we have to do it and at the same time acknowledge that there are going to be some sore spots that we have to address. And I thank Allah that I'm the kind of person who will address sore spots, even if those sore spots are on my body, or in my camp, or in my religion, or in my gender, or in my so-called race. Because to ignore the sore spots is to allow whatever is contaminating those spots to continue to grow. And eventually you will be defeated by your lack of attention to the problems. Now, the ultimate purpose for us is to do that which actually accelerates and increases the quality of our social concerns. Instructor Bilal, how will we know when that quality has been increased in us, the social concern quality? You'll know first and foremost because you will stop becoming solely interested in your own well-doing. You will not be only interested in how you fare, you know, the selfish you. Like I've heard some drug dealers say, I sell drugs because my people gotta eat, yo. I gotta eat. In other words, I don't care if these drugs kill you and your children. Me and my children, we gotta eat. That's the reptilian brain, the selfish survival brain that has been cut off from the higher regions of influences. That's speaking. That's that one. Just so that you can identify it. I'm going to be making these connections along the way. That's that brain. And an artificial ceiling has been placed right there at the top of the reptilian concerns, so that those people don't even reach up a little bit higher to be to care enough about you and your children, or about the neighbors, or even about some of their extended family members. You remember the Hatfields and the McCoys shooting at each other. Some people can't even reach high enough to say, well, dang on it, those are my relatives. They share my genes. Yeah, that ain't enough. If they're not in your direct household, man, oh man, they're in trouble. And then sometimes even in our relationships, we can't see past our own individual needs into the needs of our spouse or our children or our parents. It's a shame what the world has become, but inshallah, God willing, we're going to make our contribution towards fixing it. So in the Bible, in Genesis, this is what is meant by Adam being put into a deep sleep. Genesis says that Adam was put into a deep sleep in order that God would take from Adam a rib, all symbols. He would take from Adam a rib in order to create a help meet. They translate it as mate now, but the original King James versions of the Bible, English translation said help, M-E-E-T. So that should tell you right there that that creation, whatever that Eve is, it's going to be responsible for socialization, because that's what the meeting is. That's what meeting people is. It's socialization. Think about what I'm giving to you. So that deep sleep that I'm speaking to right now represents a scheme for canceling out the rational neocortex brain. Adam, cancel that out, send that into a deep sleep so that the emotional limbic brain, Eve, might be left in charge of all decisions. So you'll notice that the serpent went to Eve, not to Adam. So when this happens, the survival-oriented instinctive brain that I'm now calling that serpent, that becomes the special advisor to the emotionality. What are we saying in real time and in real talk? We're saying that when you do not allow the neocortex thinking brain, the one that is making moral and rational decisions and implementations, when you don't allow that brain to become activated in you, when you are not consciously turning over thoughts, ideas, decisions, so that that level of brain power becomes your ruler, the ruler in you, your personal kingdom, then by default, your system is going to defer down to the next leader in charge, which is your emotionality. You saw it in the triune brain picture. There's the neocortex on top, but if you don't use that in the way it's been designed, then the leadership will defer down to the next leader in charge, which is the limbic brain, the emotional memory brain, Eve. So the neocortex is Adam, the limbic brain is Eve, and the reptilian brain is the serpent. And I think you can see it clearly based on those connections. In scripture, Adam represents that active, alert, and observing intellect in you. Man, if I was a Christian preacher, I'd be loving this right now. This would be my next preaching on next Sunday. This would be my next lecture on Sunday in the church. Adam represents that active, alert, and observing intellect in you. In other words, Adam represents your neocortex, thinking brain. Eve represents your emotionality. She was created from a rib, and a rib is close to the heart. That's how you know it represents an emotional ability. A rib. Lots to say about that word rib, good and bad. Now, Adam, according to the Old Testament, was put into a deep sleep, as we stated, which gave the serpent the perfect opportunity to appeal to Eve's appetite, given to us in picture language as an apple. There's nothing in the Bible that says apple, but most people, when they think about the fruit, the so-called forbidden fruit, they paint it and they talk about it and they preach about it as an apple, because the apple is symbolic of the appetite. You see those apps that you have all in your computer and in your phone? It's a part of the same social scheme to manipulate you out of what is yours and to get you to buy things that you don't really need. They create an appetite. You think Apple computers are the most popular computers by mistake? They control the language to reflect the scheme. And I'm not trying to paint anybody as angels and devils tonight. I'm just showing you the language. And if you can control the input of frequencies coming from the language, there's nobody who can take over your life. not unless you give them permission. So ever since the emotional life of society has been taken over and ruled by the instinctive drives, the serpent, ever since Eve has been cozying up to those things that are feeding the appetites connected to the instinctive drives and their fight or flight position to do that which will keep you here or to run away in order to live to see another day so that they could come back and try to get what you got again. That's your R complex brain, your reptilian brain. It does what the reptile does. If the reptile thinks it can beat you, it'll fight you. If it doesn't think it will win, it will flee. And the serpent moves upon the earth on its belly, not on legs and arms and hands. It moves upon the earth on its belly. And the belly itself is a symbol of appetite. And that's what the instincts are. They are God's way of instilling in us the nature to stay in touch with appetite. Because once we lose appetite, we lose the thirst for life. So as I said in the beginning, it's not a bad thing. God didn't create anything evil. These are nature constructs, but they're designed to operate a certain way. And if the way that they have been constructed to operate is manipulated, that's when the bad things begin to happen in the human life. When we take a leader like the emotions and put them over the intellect or over the rational and the moral decision making, that's when you have problems. When you take the instinctive drives, the me, the selfish, the personal ego, you, and you set that over even your ability to feel nice and good and compassionate about people, that's when you make them disordered, you invert them. You don't place the proper leadership on the proper level. That's when you have problems. So when we talk about issues like race and all of that, you have to understand what the motivation is and what the part of the brain is generating those responses. And there is nothing about racism that is coming from your thinking brain. All of it is coming from your emotionality, the appeal to your emotionality, and it's being gassed up by your instincts. Meaning, hey man, if one of us has got to go, it's not going to be me. So I have to make up something about you not being worthy of living, especially around me. So that's where the lies begin to be concocted to justify the contaminated emotions. I'll show it to you very quickly in a nursery rhyme, I think they call it. Jack and Jill. I want you to think about Jack as being Adam, and I want you to think about Jill as being Eve. And you know that the English word jack has to do with the lifting up of things, like the jack you use to lift up the car so that you can change the tire. Like the game of jacks, where you throw the ball up. See, the ball has to be thrown up so that you can snatch up the jacks. The jacks are to be scooped up, snatched up. But the idea is that there's a lifting up of the thing called jack. And I could go on and on and on. Jack jumped over the candlestick. Jack and the beanstalk, he's climbing up. Jack has to do with things that go upwards. What goes upwards in you in terms of your human development? Your human intellect is designed to rise, to be lifted up, to be elevated, but not ego-wise. It's designed to be elevated so that it can see further and further into how to service the needs of people like itself and other beings, animals, and how to protect the forest and Greenpeace and all of the intellect is responsible for that. And it's being aided by the emotions. See, the emotional tendencies in us are aiding the good program that the emotions have established. It said we need to keep these trees here. If we chop all the trees down, we're not going to be able to breathe. That's an appeal from the emotions. That's an appeal from Eve to Adam. So she says, Adam, you have to do something about all of these trees disappearing. You have to do something about these chemtrails. That's Eve talking to Adam, your emotionality talking to your thinking brain. Your thinking brain and your emotional brain, that's the original couple or original husband and wife team. Not the emotions and the instincts. That's a different arrangement. Lots to say about that we don't have time to say tonight. But I think you can understand from those few comments concerning that it's a very serious set of connections. Now, when Eve paid all of that attention to the serpent, it has been evening for the world of human beings ever since. Not because women have failed the world. Let's extricate that from our religious preachings and teachings. That the world went wrong because of a woman named Eve so many thousands of years ago who disobeyed God, put into a situation where she was a newbie, she was a newborn into the world, and given this commandment to take all of that, but don't touch that. You know how it is. Come on now, as a child, if you tell a child, listen, here's a room full of toys, but don't touch that red fire engine in the middle of the room. Now you got your choice of hot wheels. I'm thinking back to when I was a child. Some children now, they don't know what that is, but you got your choice of Game Boy or whatever you consider to be the best toys you've ever played with. And then there's just a little simple red fire truck, plastic fire truck in the middle of when your mama says, don't touch that one in the middle of the room, you know, as soon as she closes that door, you're going for that red. You want to know, because curiosity is a part of your nature. We spoke about that. Allah created you to be curious. So if you give me something to be curious about, I'm going to start investigating. That's how the intellect develops. So the female is not the culprit. So stop blaming her. I'm talking to women also who blame their own gender for the evil. You see, with the word evil comes out of Eve. They blame their own gender for the evil that the world has come into. And it wasn't that long ago that the church, I believe the Catholic Church, rendered the meaning of that Bible set of verses as being women created for material pleasures and not having the capacity to register soul qualities. That was strictly the man. This is what some churches taught, and believe it or not, that contamination has also spread into the Islamic world by way of hadith, not by the Quran. The Quran corrected it by not even mentioning the name of Adam's spouse. There's no name Eve in the Quran. I don't know where the Muslims come from talking about Adam and Eve in the Quran. There's no Adam and Eve in the Quran. There is Adam and his zawj. And zawj is an Arabic word that means complementary partner or mate, the one who complements the plan. But Eve has been given such a black eye in religious literature and language that that word is no longer suitable for scripture. The Quran refers to what is called ahwa, which is related to an Arabic word that they use for Eve called Hawa. But there's no name Hawa in the Quran. It's only in hadith and other literature. It is extra Quranic. And if Allah left that name out of the Quran, he did so for a particular reason. Ahwa in the Quran means your lower desires. Your lower desires. So it's not talking about a woman at all. The Eve that continues to get into trouble is the one who brings your human life into its evening positioning, meaning when the lights begin to set, the sun of intelligence, especially the sun of warmth, the sun of social engagement. That's when you engage people, when the sun comes up, on the most part. When that sun begins to set, it's called the evening. So it's not talking about your wife, buddy, or your mother, your sister, your auntie, your female cousins. It's talking about something taking place in your human development or lack thereof. Let's continue. Hope everyone is enjoying themselves. If you're enjoying the information, just give me a quick shout out. Open up your phone real quick and just let me know that I can continue.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. All right.
Allahu Akbar.
Great.
Shukran jazilan.
Very good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay. You can close your phones again. I do that for my own spirit. That's my battery pack. Every time you do that, that's a battery charge for me. Right, Kathy? She knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's a battery charge. We need that. We're humans. We need that. All right, let's continue. And you can do that whether you agree with the information or not. That's not my main concern. It's just here for you to think about. Let's continue. Now, as stated, it is not because women have failed the world, but it is because a corrupted emotionality has failed the struggling intellect. Let's look at these things on the abstract level. It's not a female failing the male. It's not Eve as a feminine woman failing the masculine male. That's not what this is talking about. It's talking about the putting to sleep of your thinking brain so that your emotional brain, in conjunction with your instinctive brain, are positioned to make the majority of your life decisions. That's where so many people are on this planet right now. That's why they keep the majority of people on earth illiterate, so that you can depend on mostly your emotions and your instincts to make your major decisions. Our Prophet Muhammad, and we ask that the prayers and the peace be upon his mission and upon his role as Rahmatul lil Alameen, or a mercy to all creatures, mercy to all beings. It is reported that he stated, quote, "Every child is born alal fitra, or upon the fitra," end quote. The challenge of this life is to maintain our original fitra-based foundation. Now, if you don't know what fitra means, it just means nature. What you find when you study Mother Nature and her patterns. What science today is calling pattern recognition in creation is just recognition of God's fitra, because the patterns are speaking to you. The patterns are giving you instructions. All right? So every child is born upon these sets of patterns that we see. And there are sets of patterns that are taking place internally, as we discussed, emotionally, morally, rationally, spiritually, etc. That's the fitra. The challenge of this life is to maintain our original fitra-based foundation. You're born with that. It is a foundation of instinctive and intuitive behaviors which every infant inherits. Let's just add a word here. Let me. It is a pattern of instinctive and intuitive behaviors which every infant inherits. Every infant comes here with an activated set of instincts for eating, drinking, wanting to be warm. And it also has a low level of intuitive possibilities, we'll call them. It can intuit, but it's a weak form of intuition. Sometimes a stranger will come to the child and the child would just start wailing like, whoa, did you do something to my child? No, I don't know what the problem. But every time that person shows up, yeah, that child go, wow, wow, right? And then they have to grow out of it because they're intuiting that there's some danger coming from you, even though there's not. And so that intuition in the human being is a low-level intuition that itself is a muscle in you that is supposed to be developed so that by the time you become teenage and adult, you come into what I call supra intuition, the ability to be pretty much spot on in your intuitive grasp. But that's a story for another, that's a subject for another day. But in the infant, low level. So infants inherit this. It's a part of the DNA, RNA makeup. So things like love, gentility, care, inquisitiveness, smiling that you see coming from the infant, and the infant shows other concerns. Sometimes if it's moving its bowels, it would have a face like don't say anything to me right now, right? Sometimes when it's first learning to walk, it has that same look. Don't bother me right now. Don't touch me. I got this. Just back up. I got it. Even though it don't got it, right? So these things are growing from weakness into strength. That's the nature of life, nature of all living things, to grow out of a weakness into strength. So these are part and parcel of the human fitra-based nature. The mentioning of animals suggests that these behaviors represent the instinctive nature that humans share with animals. You'll see that mentioning of the animal in this hadith. Now, these behaviors are connected to our unconscious instincts. Our conscious decision-making operates from a different area of the brain. Now, some of this is technical, stuff that you'll have to study on your own. I'm only giving it to you so that you'll have the information to study. Now, the hadith of the Prophet says that each child is born upon the fitrah. Then his parents make him a Jew, Christian, or a Zoroastrian, the way an animal gives birth to a normal offspring. Have you noticed any that were born mutilated? Now, this was collected by al-Bukhari and Muslim, two of the top authorities of hadith collectors in Islamic history, or Muslim, the history of Muslims in the world. Now, what is this all about? This has been a bone of contention amongst the people of the book when it comes to Muslims and how they believe Muslims are viewing them. And because a lot of times they replace this word fitra with Muslim. They'll say every child is born Muslim. So people who are not technically Muslims, who don't see themselves as Muslims, they say, well, this hadith is saying that Muslims are the best thing since sliced bread on earth, created by God. And that all of the rest of us, Jews and Christians and even the Zoroastrian, we are born in the same way that an animal is born and is supposed to be whole and normal, but is born mutilated. When it's born mutilated, it's not acceptable. So what this is saying in a very slick way for many people who are reading it is that Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, et al. Are mutilated religions. They are mutilated. They're not whole. Now let's look into that, because we're talking about racism. We're talking about religious discrimination. And all of these issues and problems are due to the misreading of scripture, the misunderstanding of how scriptural language is to be implemented and applied. Let's talk about that, and we'll be able to wind down from there. Now, this is saying that every child or every infant is born with a spiritual nature. And that nature is naturally inclined towards goodness. I don't have to prove that. You know that from if your mother or a parent or whatever, and you've seen children born and growing up in the, you know that's no devil. That's not Rosemary's baby. It's your brother or your sister. That's a natural human life that's created. And you can see the goodness. You can see when you begin to reason with that child concerning its toys and how it should share and all, and you can see, almost see the activity taking place in the brain of that developing intellect that says, mama's right. Let me share this toy with my sibling. And then they start to play and they know, hey, can I borrow your toy? See, this is a growing development in human beings, and it's a beautiful development on that level. But that's their fitra. They haven't read the Quran or the Torah or the gospel. They haven't read these texts in order to decide what's a good behavior, what's not good behavior, and etc. What's a sin and what's not. No, all of that is needed for their development has already been clocked into their DNA, RNA makeup. It's been genetically inherited how to act and react to these issues and concerns. So that fitra is an air principle, AIR for those on the phone. It's an air principle in that it is indicative of the original human spirit, which is born as a result of Allah's ruh. That's what it's called in the Quran. Allah says that when I have breathed into this Khalifa of my ruh, and they translate it as breath, and breath is symbolic of spirit. When I have breathed into him of my spirit, see, minus the spirit, the Khalifa wasn't worth paying attention to. But God says, after I have breathed into him of ruhi, my spirit, the spirit that's blown into the human vessel, then all of you prostrate in the direction of the Khalifa, this newbie, the Khalifa. And all it is saying is that when you have activated within yourself the kind of attention that is to be paid to your natural life and spirit, that original spirit, if you forgot what that is, go consult the infant and the toddler. They'll tell you what you're supposed to be acting like and thinking like, and making corrections, how you're supposed to make corrections on your behavior. You don't have to go into history for that one. Just go into the history of your child, or you when you were a child, if you can remember that far back. Remember the goodness that was there? No matter who you see in today's world as being an evil doer, they were not born an evil doer. They were born upon the fitra. See, it didn't say every Muslim was born upon the fitra. The prophet said every child, every human is born upon the fitra. Now let's get to this other part. As I stated, the fitra is an air principle. Now we're going to be talking about the four major elements: air, fire, water, land, the four basic elements. The fitra is an air principle in that it is indicative of the original human spirit, which is born as a result of Allah's breath or ruh being blown into the human vessel. That's what makes you definitively human. Now, what this hadith is saying is that every human is born spiritual. If you don't believe it, do you think that the 3-month-old baby sees itself as a biology? And it feels maybe when it has to go to the bathroom, or sensations related to hunger and those things. But it sees itself as an internal. It doesn't even know what it looks like. If you put it in front of the mirror, it won't know that that is them, because Allah has created us all to grow based on the platform of spiritual activity first, within. We are spirits within the biology. We come into a knowledge of the flesh and blood later. You remember that moment when you stuck your baby in front of the mirror and they recognized that that was them, looking back at them, and started giggling and pointing and touching the mirror? You know, that's me. Or the first time that they recognized that this was their hand that they were controlling a toll that they could put in their mouth. They could pick that foot up and put it in. Man, oh man, when we recognized that, we were just so happy. But that's the point where we began to come into a recognition of the biology. Prior to that, we only knew ourselves as internal feelings, spirit, hunger, thirst, being bothered, being comforted, being warm. Those were things that were affecting us inside. So that fitra is an air quality and air principle. Now, this hadith is saying that every child is born spiritual, but his parents, now you have to understand what parent means in this context. It only means your environmental influences. Your environmental influences. That's what makes him a Jew, a Christian, or a Zoroastrian. Now you might say, well, that doesn't satisfy my issues because it was just Jew, Christian, or Zoroastrian. What's that all about? Let's look at it. Muslim, i.e. the fitra, is an air principle. The Jew is only symbolic of the earth principle. The earth principle. The Christian is symbolic of the water principle. In the Quran, interestingly enough, Allah highlights how the Christians hear the revelation of Muhammad and it brings them to tears, see, water. And we know baptism is a major feature of Christianity. I could show you just item for item, element for element, how these religions have taken on the constitution of these particular elements. And Zoroastrian, as you know, has a lot to do with fire, what they call fire worship even. Now, all four of these elements operate psychologically within every human being. This is not addressing the Jews as a race. It's not addressing the Muslims as a race or the Christians as a race or religion or the Zoroastrians. Why the Zoroastrians? Out of all of the religions they could have chosen Buddhism or Hinduism or any of these. They chose Zoroastrianism because it's not talking about literal ethnic groups or religious differentiations. It's talking about symbolically connected concepts to the four major elements. So let's continue. I'm going to further prove my point. So these four elements are addressed throughout the Bible and the Quran. Its equivalents are the four rivers of the Garden of Eden that went out from the garden and became heads. The four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they represent these four same elements. The four madhabs of Islam were actually designed to reflect also the four major elements in creation. Even the four major Sahaba of Muhammad, you know the four major ones, they are also constructed literally and in terms of the literature to reflect four major elements in creation. And the list of these fours go on and on. Now, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, who was an 18th century Lubavitcher Rebbe, was of the belief that, quote, humans have two souls, an animal soul, which animates the physical body called nefesh. That's the equivalent of what the Quran calls a nefs, N-A-F-S, and a divine soul. So this rabbi postulated that we have two souls, an animal soul, which regulates the flesh, the biology, and a divine soul, which is connected to God Most High. This latter soul, he has surmised, quote, must be developed and consciously focused on spiritual things. See? So when you take that spiritual inclination that you were born with and you begin to develop it and build upon it and question it, be curious about your spiritual concerns. And spiritual concerns can be emotional. Spiritual concerns can be mental in terms of what your intellect is deciding upon. Spirit only means direction. This is what Imam Muhammad told us. Spirit simply means it's equated with the winds or the air, and air blows directionally. And in fact, it blows in 4 major directions, doesn't it? Southerly, northerly, easterly, westernly. The air itself blows in 4 different directions, and those 4 directions, they sync up perfectly with all of the 4s that I just mentioned. Even the 4 first surahs of the Quran sync up perfectly with the 4 major elements. That's a teaching for another day. Just remind me to do that. It will be my pleasure. Now, going back to the Rebbe's statement, he says that the 2 souls, he compared them to the rider and the horse. When they work together, all is well, but he says that if the horse throws the rider, the lower body desires take over, and a person acts only on animal instincts. You see how these thinkers in religion put these things together? But the masses of people in religion are sold fairy tales and information that I'm surprised grown-ups with PhDs and master's degrees are still believing on these levels. It boggles the mind that these people who go to church and synagogue and masjid every week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, respectively, that they still believe in fairy tales in terms of the language of their scriptures that is speaking high wisdom. And all you have to do is what the Quran says, ponder what's being said. Allah says, do they not yatadabbaru, the Quran? Do they not think deeply on the Quran? And the Torah has similar words concerning the obtaining of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, the getting of an understanding over knowledge and wisdom. So if you're walking around with words in your head but no understanding, you're in a bad situation as far as scripture is concerned. And we need to do what's necessary to improve our condition and our conditioning when it comes to our understanding of what we see as being the word of God, the creator of all. So the 2 souls, he says, are the rider and the horse. The horse is the lower soul called the nephesh, and the rider is the higher soul that in some parts of Judaism is called the ruh. In the Quran, we mentioned it's called the ruh. It's a related word, consonantally connected. They're both saying the same thing, basically. So there is, the higher rider is that ruh that is connected directly to divine thoughts, ideas, constructs, activities even. And the lower soul is that soul that is connected to what's needed to maintain balanced emotionality and stable instincts, activated instincts. That's the lower soul. That's the nephesh, or the nefs, as the Quran would call it. The higher soul's registrations are in the ruh, or the ruach, as it's called in Hebrew. I hope you're understanding me. Now, there is more to be debated on this topic, but suffice it to say that there seems to be some quality serving to separate human thinking and behavior from other animate life forms. In other words, there seems to me to be definitely a higher soul that is registering higher spiritual concerns that connect us directly to our Rabb, or our guardian evolver, sustainer. It seems to me that humans are operating upon a bit of a higher principle of activation than the horse, or the beetle, bug, or the dog, or these other creations, biological creations. Now, what separates the human from the animal, Quranically speaking, is the directional influence resulting from the addition of Allah's directional spirit, called the ruh. That's what separates the human. He was just anybody before God blew that ruh into him. That's what activated him, and that's what earned him the position to be serviced by other aspects of creation, as the human being is. We're serviced by the winds. We're serviced by the fire. Remember, these things had rule over us. We were scared of the fire. I know somebody lit a fire, 2 stones rubbed together. Look at how we use fire now in industry. Remember when the storms and the unruly winds used to make us run and hide? Remember when the waters would become so inundated that we would drown? We didn't know how to protect ourselves against the flood waters and all of these other. Do you remember these things? They still happen, but we don't see them as boogeymen anymore. We see them as activities taking place in nature. And Allah has given us the kind of intellect that now rules over these quantities due to the quality of thinking that the human brain is able to come into. All right. So this spirit of God that we're speaking about is a spirit which has a direct effect upon the motivations within the human intellect. And a sign of it is when you take a very deep and swift breath into the nostrils. You can feel a sensation in the middle of the forehead where the neocortex is located. The neocortex is communicating with the limbic brain, which tempers its decisions with emotional input. A lot of language, I know. You're going to get this and you're going to study it on your own. The neocortex communicates with the emotional brain, the limbic brain. In other words, the thinking brain communicates with the emotional brain. And the emotional brain tempers the decisions that the thinking brain comes up with. It tempers it with emotional input. In other words, yeah, you can make a lot of money doing that, homie, but do you have to sell drugs to do it? Or do you have to prostitute women to really have the kind of money you trying to? See, that's your emotional brain speaking. That's the woman appealing to the man to say, husband, yeah, I know we have needs, but daggone it, you don't have to go to that extreme to satisfy these needs. You get on that trail, I might leave you. You don't have to do all of that. Let's pray to God for a better situation. Don't be out there selling no women and no drugs. No, that goes beyond reason. See, that's Adam and Eve communicating as they do in the Quran, Adam and his Zawj. But in the Bible, they've been separated to give you a peep into the science of how human beings are manipulated. If you put Adam into a deep sleep, you put the thinking brain into an inoperative positioning, then the world of schemers now are free to cohort with Eve, your emotional brain, and lead it to what is going to further satisfy their survival. The survival of industries, the survival of ginormous constructs that are now ruling over us in the world as we speak. Your big old Walmarts. And these people, they don't care nothing about you necessarily. They care about the money that keeps coming in to keep their coffers full. The big bankers, you know, those folks, they don't necessarily, now you might have some individuals that have some care and some concern, but as an industry, you're not going to find it because they represent that serpent that is appealing to your emotionality to keep on purchasing, keep on buying. They call it the economic principle of supply and demand, but nature gives us demand and supply. When the baby comes out of that womb and begins to demand some sustenance, the supply is sent to the mother's breast to satisfy the demand. When there's no more demand, the supply dries up. When you no longer have a demand for all of the foolish things that they cause us to spend our hard-earned money on, they just create an artificial demand in you so that they can keep supplying that thing. So you see how they flipped it topsy-turvy? It's supposed to be demand and supply. They have made it supply and demand. They already have it on the shelves. They just have to create an appetite in you, right, for the things that they have created for you, whether you need them, want them, care for them or not. And most of it we'll buy. And less than a year later, we'll be looking at that same outfit and we'll say, why did I even buy that? That same vehicle, I really didn't need that. Friends that we took on. Why did I ever get involved with this knucklehead? Because we thought we were demanding it emotionally. Now, lastly, and if I don't finish in the next 5 minutes, I'll save it for next week, inshallah. It'll be enough for you to study until then. Now, the neocortex that we're discussing is communicating with the limbic brain. And as I said, it tempers the decisions that limbic brain wants to make. Not, pardon me, that the neocortex wants to make. The emotional brain sends it information that says, you don't have to do it that way, or it's not proper that you do it that way. You're going to hurt people. You're going to hurt us if you do it that way. So then the brain, the thinking brain, has to figure out another course of action. Now, once a decision is made, the neocortex goes on to design a rational plan for the implementation of the decisions. This spirit that we're discussing, called the ruh, is responsible for the establishment of a moral nature. You've heard of that, a moral, nature, which then has to deal with issues related to human decency. Unlike the animal life, which has its issues clocked into its instinctive and emotional drives, it is the misunderstanding of these zodiacal references. Let's bring that in for a moment. A misunderstanding of the zodiacal references for both the Quran and Hadith that have Muslims, Christians, and Jews unnecessarily battling with each other. The Jewish community became the bad guy in the Quranic scripture. A sore spot. Let's look at that. The Jewish community, Yahuda, became the bad guy in Quranic scripture because they represent the primal instinctive brain that is always looking out for numero uno. So we're reading about the Jews in the Quran, and we're thinking it's talking about a particular people who wear that title over in the Middle East, or over in Judea, or over in Israel, or over in what some might call occupied Palestine, wherever you think the Jews are. Or in America, in the Jewish community in America, or whatever. And we're looking at the scripture and we're reading about the Jews, and we're thinking it's talking about those people, and it's not. Now, this is my opinion. You can debate it or discuss it or disagree with it if you want, but I'm going to show you how this makes a whole lot of sense, and how this understanding is a mercy from God for all of us. Are we thinking that God would permanently tag a people in the Quran for all times? That means that there's no reason for me to want to change. There's no reason for me to want to act differently, to improve upon my insights and my concerns. If God has locked me into the Quran as being a particular type, where's the struggle then for me to be better than what you say I am? I can only be what God, if he clocked it in the scriptures for all times. And if Jews are the bad guys in the Quran, then the Jews are going to be the bad guys for all times in the minds of Muslims who read the Quran. And I'm saying to you Muslims, you're wrong. I'm saying to the Muslims and the Christians, you're wrong for thinking that what you read about the Jews in the New Testament is the people that you call the Jewish people. You know how many people have called themselves Jewish? I was born Jewish. I was born into Judaism. My mother had converted to Judaism right before I was born. I never knew the church. I knew the synagogue, the Hebrew way. So anybody can pick up an ideology or philosophy. You think it's bound by genetics, genealogy, the father's line, and all of you keep believing that. It's not speaking to that. It's speaking to ideas that are so far above where we are now as thinkers in the world, or people who refuse to think in some cases, that it would make your head spin to know what these things are discussing. So going back to the point before we conclude, or as we conclude, many of the mentionings of these various peoples in scripture, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran notwithstanding, are zodiacal references It's a reference to the 12 points of influence in the universe that have been personified and made into archetypes that we now see as literal persons or people in history. I felt somebody scratching their head just now, not in a bad way, but in a way to say, what? Who, when did this, what? You have to study it. Let me finish. Now, I'm telling you that a scheme has been afoot to literalize scripture so that people will on their own, believing that this represents them and those represent the other ones, have them at their necks, at their stabbing them in the back, in the head, and the kneecap, and all of that unnecessarily. Because our scripture said, you are the enemy, Jew and Christian. And the Christians say, you Muslims are the antagonist in our story forever. You're going to be our enemy forever. We'll never come to your interfaith because we're natural enemies according to the Bible. And if you don't accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior and as the Son of God, we can't even dialogue with you. There's some Christians who believe that. Fortunately, we have more enlightened people in the world now who are beginning to break out of that shell. That's a mercy to the humankind. That's a mercy. So no, any human being can become anything that is genetically clocked into them to become. We see the Jews, on the most part, as being selfish people, as saying even God belongs to them and nobody else, the Lord of Israel. The Quran had to come along to say Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of all people in all the universe. Because we ran into that hiccup as religious thinkers in the world. We began to personalize concepts that were never meant to be personal. When these books were revealed to these prophets and given to these messengers to distribute among the people, those people, so many years ago, they understood the difference between literal and figurative. So this language wasn't a problem for the original people who received it. It was later on that the nature of information was changed to reflect almost a purely literal rendering of scripture. And that's when most of the problems for the people of the book began to surface. The Christians represent the emotional limbic brain, and the newbie Muslim represents the neocortex. So I'm going to make my points about this, and then we're going to conclude and save the rest for next week, inshallah. Let me just make sure you're understanding me. The Jewish community became the bad guy because of all of this literalism. And I'm gonna tell you, if you really believe that about the Jews, you Christians, you wouldn't have anything to do with anybody Jewish ever again because of what the New Testament says about the Jews and the synagogue of Satan, being the synagogue of Satan. Man, there's so much bad stuff in the New Testament about the Jew that I don't see how a Christian could have another conversation with a Jewish person based on the literal rendering of those New Testament verses. Call the Jewish people the devil and the father of it, the father of evil, and all of these things out of the mouth of Jesus, the loving one. But we don't discuss these things in church. They don't end up being the favorite verses of the preacher because those verses are not going to bring in more money. It'll bring in more intelligence, but it won't bring in more money. Unless you understand the need to support these people who are telling this high level of truth. It's not talking about the Jewish people. It's talking about the Jewish level of your triune brain. Now let's look at it. So the Jewish community, they came first. They represent the so-called lizard brain, the R complex, the brainstem, and the cerebellum, the part that deals with autopilot, fight, and flight. Aren't we always seeing the Jews as being in one skirmish or another? Everybody's after us, can't live with nobody, nobody wants to live with us. That was a conditioning that came about due to the misreading of Scripture, is my point. Then I said that the Christians represented the middle brain, the mammalian brain, the mammal brain, the limbic brain that controls emotions and memories and habits and attachments. Now, that's Jesus all the way through. That's the New Testament all the way through. That's the average Christian all the way through. We see them as being more emotionally inclined than other religions, even than Muslims. Christians are much more emotion-centered. That's the conditioning of their scriptures and what their scriptures demand of them in terms of charity and all of the things, the good things that human beings are supposed to be involved in. But that's the Christian aspect in this triune picture of the people of the book. We're dealing in specifically with Jews, Christians, and Muslims right now. There are other people of the book, but these are the three highlights. Then I'm saying to you that the neocortex, the newbie, the new kid on the block, the neocortex, which controls the language. You see the emphasis we put on language in Islam, al-Islam, reading the Quran in its original Arabiya, in its original language. It deals with abstract thought, imagination, consciousness, reasoning, rationalizing. So we're not as given to emotions as the Christians are. We're given more to the intellectual side of information and information sharing. So there's your Muslim, but it has nothing to do with you as a race, is the point. It has to do with what you choose to focus upon. So anybody whose primary focus is on the reptilian concerns is, by definition, a Jew. And a Jew and being Jewish is two different things. Being a Hebrew, that's the different. We're talking about what has been popularly accepted now as a Jew. It's not talking about a race or a person. It's talking about a particular proclivity in the brain for focusing and giving undue attention to a particular level of activity. Same for the Christian in the mammalian brain. Same thing for the Muslim in the so-called the human brain or the neocortex brain. It's not talking about the people of Saudi or the people of Pakistan or the people of Egypt as Muslims or the people in other parts of Africa as Muslims. That's not what it's dealing with. Listen, our scriptures, our respective scriptures are giving us, believe it or not, very clear information on how the human being has been constructed and what supports your uprising and what supports your demise. The Quran says, "Laqad khalaqnal insana fi ahsani taqweem." Certainly, we have created the human being in the most excellent of organizational designs. That's what this is addressing, not your race. When it gives the man permission to beat the woman, you know, and all of that foolishness that we've literalized, and that's why we're in trouble, because we think it's literal. If she disobeys you, you have a right to strike her, argue with her, separate from the bed, and lastly, strike her. And if she doesn't give you any problem after that, you can accept her back and don't badger her. That's not talking about a male and a female husband and wife. That's talking about your rational mind and your emotionality, with your emotionality being the wayward woman in you. Mister, it's in you. That woman is in you. You're about to do something wrong. Don't you argue with yourself? I know I shouldn't do that. I'm married. I know she's fine, but I shouldn't do that. Now, if you don't stop there and you start handing her your phone number and all of that, and you start sneaking around and all of that, then you refuse to share the bed. What does that mean? Refuse to engage. This is talking to your rational mind, the male in you. You're supposed to refuse to engage that level of deviant emotionality especially if it's going to mean that you're in a situation to procreate that behavior. Talking fast, but I'm making sense, and I hope you're registering this. And then if that doesn't, this is all taking place in you, the individual, male or female. Then if that doesn't work, strike them. Doesn't that sound like a lizard? Because these three measures are also related to these three levels of the brain. Man, oh man, what nunetics has uncovered is incredible. It is credible. It's amazing what nunetic thinking that we've been gifted with as a gift from the Most High. I didn't learn this in college. I never went to college. I graduated from high school, and here I am. So if I'm saying anything that makes sense, all of the glory goes to God. But I know that you thinkers out there, you intellectuals and you thinkers out there, you know that this is worth investigating. This nunetic method of identifying words, particularly words in our respective scriptures. Because I'm drawing connections and have drawn connections for you, you could pull a year's worth of curriculum out of what I've given you just in this one day. All right. So with that said, we're going to continue on this trail this time next week, inshallah. All of you who are here today are invited back if you find this appealing in terms of information. I'm going to now, pardon me for keeping you past a little bit past the time that I had decided on. It's 8:09 Eastern Standard Time where I am, but I do want to open up for any questions that our guests may have. Give me just one moment to get back to my official page, pardon me, to the faces. And again, if you are in a position to show your face in the place, then do so. I'm going to ask for a 3-minute break. So for anybody who needs to use a restroom or get something to eat or get some tea or something to drink, like I do, let's just take a 3-minute break. It's 8:10 now. We'll be back at the microphone and the camera by 8:13 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, God willing. Thank you all. And Ezekiel, please remind me to restart the video.
Yes, sir.
Okay. One moment. All right, there we go. Be right back. Okay, I'm back at the mic. I'm going to mute out the callers, and the guests whom we have can just simply mute themselves into the conversation in order to ask their question.
Okay, instructor,
Yes.
restart the video, please.
Oh, yes, thank you. You see how quickly I forget? I need a technician. All right, hold on one moment. Oh, actually, I never stopped it, so that's a good thing. All right. That's how focused I am on the information. I even forgot to stop it, so it's going. Thank you. And let me mute. Thank you all for being so patient. Bring myself back into the picture here. And we're ready to roll. And again, I'm asking the regulars to give deference to our guests. And we're happy to see so many of our interfaith guests with us tonight. So we're going to take questions from them, or comments even from them, or even just simply greetings from them. All right.
Brother,
And let us begin.
Salam alaikum, brother. Brother
Alaikum
Benjamin.
assalam.
Brother Suleiman invited me to this presentation tonight, and I'm very glad that he did. I don't see I don't see him here right now, but I'm very happy that I was able to participate. I learned quite a bit.
Great.
I have a basic.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Give us your name, please, and where you are, where you're from.
Jaron. My name is Jaron.
Yes.
I'm from Rochester, New York.
Excellent. Very good.
Okay. My question, I have a friend. Let me start by saying like this. You said in the presentation that a child is born spiritual. Okay. How would you translate that? How would you take that to the level when a person says that a gay person is saying that he's born that way? Would you say he can be born that way, or it is his environment that makes him gay?
Gay is a sexual preference that doesn't even come into the picture until puberty.
Okay, so is that learned behavior, or is he born that way, or what?
Well, if he's not born with it, it's obviously learned behavior.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's learned behavior. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he can unlearn that behavior.
We can unlearn or learn any of our behaviors. Let me just say this real quick about behavior, and I'll do something further on it this time next week. And see, the keys for understanding these things are in the language and the terminology itself. Okay. The word behavior is from behave. The word behave is from the word have, like I possess this. And the word have is out of the Semitic languages. It's what gives us the Hebrew word for Eve, Hava, and Hiva. It gives us the Arabic word for Eve, Hawa. That's all dealing with behavior, human behavior. And human behavior is mostly emotionally induced based on what you feel you need to have or possess. And you do that based on how you feel, not necessarily what is being instigated in you through your DNA. Mm-hmm. Your DNA is very specific in terms of what it asks for, how your cellular system operates, how all of your systems operate. Those are biologically, those proclivities are biologically clocked into the biology. But there's nothing in there. There's something in there that says that at some point you need to reproduce, and we're going to give you that ability through the sperm, through the ovum. But there's nothing in there that tells you be gay or be straight. There's nothing in there. The only thing that's in there is what do I need to do to survive and have future generations appear on this earth so that I can keep this species here. That's what the instinctive brain is all about. How to stay here. And if I decide rationally that in staying here, I want to stay with a male and a male, I want to be male and male, or I want to be female and female, or I could decide I want to be adult and child. People are making these decisions every day. But if we don't have a moral compass to be able to judge what is conducive to the better outcome of society, and we don't have these rules and regulations that will keep us away from going into the extremes of these things when we socialize, then we're going to have conflict and confusion. But as far as the baby itself, the infant itself, there's no sexual proclivity there. There's no preference for being gay or being straight or being, all it wants to know is, are you going to treat me right?
Okay.
Even if you're my mama, are you going to treat me right? So we don't want to overdo what it is the human being is, especially when the human being is being newly introduced into the world.
Got you. Okay. Thank you, brother.
Great question. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you so much, Imam Bilal,
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
evening. You've certainly given us a lot to ponder, and I was especially, as a woman, I think, especially appreciative of the non-literal reading about Eve, and that was really quite helpful.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone for welcoming us here, and we will send you the information of the next interfaith things for our part that we're doing, and would love to just see all of you. Dr. Fartun Muhammad is going to be our next speaker in January.
Great.
We alternate between Muslims and Jews and Christians and Buddhists and other people, but she happens to be the next person in January. So we'll let you all know that, and to know that we would really welcome each one of you to this kind of conversation. And it's been a joy to be here tonight. And thank you again, Imam.
It's been our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure. Thank you very much, Kathy.
Thanks.
Much love to all of you. And feel free, I'm going to send a replay of this webinar to you, and feel free to share it with anyone that you feel needs to hear it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, because I know not everybody was able to get on. So
yeah. And interestingly enough, not every one of my learners were able to get onto the webinar on Monday. So
exactly.
I'm sure, we'll find a better way of making sure that that link is, where we can see it.
We're working on that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that most of the people, if not all of the people here tonight, will be happy to be a part of the next Interfaith session. Thank you so much. All right. Is there anyone else, a guest, who would like to ask a question or make a comment?
Okay, brother, one more question. I apologize. I have another question. One more question.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
This doesn't pertain exactly to the subject tonight, but because you're so brilliant, and I really do appreciate Brother Ben for inviting me. I got to try and get in touch with him to thank him and to follow you a little closer. What's the difference between Islam and Freemasonry? What does Islam say about Freemasonry? Is that something you care to discuss now, or we need to talk about it later?
We'll talk about it later. I'll just say it in this one sentence, that Freemasonry has to do with knowledge out of ancient Egypt, and that's a study all by itself. It came to be something that represented a secret type of knowledge that was not to be shared with the many, and there are reasons why they decided upon that. It drew a lot of the information after Al-Islam had been introduced out of Mecca and Medina. They began to draw information out of that body of knowledge, but Freemasonry was in existence before the technical revelation that we call the Quran was in existence. It's knowledge that came off of that was preserved on the walls of ancient Egypt, and it came out of their socialization and whatever they considered to be even revelation coming to their important people. But it's all dealing with the same subject that we were talking about tonight. It's abstract knowledge, symbols that were designed to be interpreted abstractly. So when you look at Thoth, T-H-O-T-H, and these other characters on the walls of ancient Egypt, we're not to see them as literal people in history. We're to see them as aspects of human growth and development, with Thoth being the concept that gave birth to what the Greeks then focused on as thought. So these things became psychology. Ancient Egypt is the father of psychology in the world. Psychology for them was the study of the soul, not just the study of the behavior that it came to be in the West. So there's a whole treatment of what all of that represents that I'll be happy to do in the near future, inshallah. Thank you for the question. Okay, anyone else? Any guests? Feel free to unmute yourselves and speak. All right, so while we're waiting, I know some people are waiting for others to ask the question that they want to ask. And they're hoping they don't have to ask it. But there's no such thing as a dumb question. And I know I gave you a lot, so there's a lot to think about, and you might not know exactly what to ask based on what I was teaching. But you can ask a question just based on, as our brother here did, Jaron, just based on some other thing that you had in the back of your mind or wanted to know about. That's fine also. Doesn't have to be directly related. Also, there are some comments in the chat that I haven't looked at yet. They may very well be questions. In the meantime, let me do this. Let me just give out my personal information so that you can further contact me. And my number is 516-300-2257. Once again, 516-300-2257. You can reach me day or night, preferably day, by that number. And if you happen to think of a question or comment tomorrow or Tuesday, feel free to call me. All right. You don't disturb me when you call me. You bother me when you don't call me, because I like hearing from you. I'm a people person. I don't know if you can tell. All right. So please do that. And my email address is cosmicquran1@gmail.com. I'm going to spell that out for you. COSMICQURAN1. That's the number 1 @gmail.com. cosmicquran1@gmail.com. Let me take a quick look at the chat box. And oh, this is nice. So this is from Chris and Ted. To everyone, thank you, dear brother, for your love, passion, and insight. The concept of many layers in the Word of God is so precious. It gets us away from disputes about the sacred verses, meaning this or that, and allows us to say and. Further, a deep thanks is due for the insights that seek love and unity among estranged people. To debunk misinterpretations that divide and refresh ourselves with vibrant interpretations that bring us together. And then he puts in capitalization, so important. Greetings and peace and thanks again. That's wonderful. Then we have from Habiba Abdul Shahid, one of our regulars. Fantastic. Your words and energies are appreciated. That's great. So even if you have a question that you want to put in the chat, if you're too shy, that's fine also. We appreciate the comments and the commentary and the questions. So is there anyone else among the guests?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Yeah, this is Brother Melvin out of Santa Ana, California.
Yeah, good to see you
and
again.
My question, likewise, and my question is in reference to a comment that you had made, and you made the statement "heart of heart," and I said, okay, well that means is we have more than one heart, and if you because if you know if you really check your heart of heart, and then you made your statement, and I kind of wanted a little more elaboration on that, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll give you 60 seconds worth of elaboration on that.
Okay.
There's the heart, and then there are your central concerns. The heart has a periphery, but then there is something called the core of the heart. We call them core concerns. We're concerned about things, but we also have things that we are centrally concerned about, like family life, marriage, children, you know, that kind of thing. Making sure that we have enough income, making sure that we have enough food to feed ourselves and our families. Those are core concerns. Core concerns, however, can also be, what's the word I'm looking for? Extended. Yeah, that's a good word. Core concerns can be extended even to the point where the concerns you have about yourself and your family members, those concerns can actually be extended to the point where you feel exactly that way about strangers. That's how you know you're growing humanly. I can give money to people across the ocean who I never met, who don't look like me, don't even speak my language. Some of them don't have clothes to wear, decent clothes, decent food. I don't know their names. I never will know their names, but I'm going to send them $100 anyway to that relief fund. That's when the heart begins to expand, and then humanity becomes your core concern. That's what happened to Muhammad, as it's given in the Quran, when Allah says, have we not expanded your breast?
Mm.
And it's in every religion. It's in human nature to do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Alaikum assalam. We'll take one more question before we close out. And Bayina says, very enlightening lecture. These are our recent graduates who are now instructors themselves speaking. So if there are any instructors who would like to ask a question or make a quick comment, feel free to open up and do so that our guests can hear from at least one or two of you before we close.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Tell us who you are.
It's Ahmed Hassan in DC.
Yes.
Question about anger and how we can control anger using the understanding of the triune brain, meaning the atom, the conscious mind, not allowing the anger. And I'm assuming it comes from the midbrain, the Eve.
Yes.
So let's say we got a real big problem in the American society, we'll say, with anger causing a lot of destruction. How would you deal with that?
Very good question. Anger, as you stated, comes from the midbrain, or the so-called emotional brain, the limbic brain, mammalian brain. It's given all of these names, it gets confusing. But it's the same strategy that I just gave you for how issues are handled in that Quranic explanation of the so-called beating of the women. Those 3 steps I just gave you is also the 3 steps necessary for the control of anger, because the woman in that episode represents extreme emotionalism. So what you're beating is not your wife. What you're beating back is that tendency to be over emotional, which is going to blind you rationally, intellectually. It's going to put blinders on you. So the thing is that you have to be conscious of your own emotions. Too many people are not. Before you know it, they've already engaged in some behavior. Some of them are sitting in jail cells right now saying, I don't know what happened to me, I just lost it because of anger. So it can be anger, or it can be any extreme emotion. Al-Fatiha speaks to it when it says, to not be of these 2 types. It tells us what type to be. Those who that we are to seek the path of those who have civilizing grace upon them. It's called ni'mah, grace, civilizing grace. Grace that makes you soft in your relationships to other people. You have to mute out the people just to make sure that I'm being heard. Give me just one moment. Hold on one moment. Let's see here. Okay, let me just put the general mute on. Yeah, you can still open up. These 3 areas of the brain that I was talking about today are also given in Al-Fatiha, where it says that we want to be on the straight path called the Sirat al-Mustaqim. And it's a path of those who have God's civilizing grace upon them. And the word an'amta is from ni'mah and al-an'am, which means cattle. And what differentiates cattle from other species of animals is that they can be domesticated, they can be civilized, quote unquote. They can be made to give their utility to human service, to the betterment of human society. We can ride the horses, we can have the bulls pull the plows, and see that's cattle. It represents we don't do that with the porcupine. See, nitma and amta and anam is not referring to the porcupine and the skunk and those people. It's referring to those animals that can be domesticated that you can pet and they don't go crazy on you, right? That's what it's talking about. And then it says, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ, el-maghdubi, to not be of el-maghdubi. El-maghdubi means extreme anger. Those who are under the influence of extreme emotions, you know, just washing everything out, that was good. You're doing all right, and you come home and that person is in that foul, funky mood again, and it's the end of the relationship at that point, because they couldn't control that urge in them to just be different just to be different, or to say something nasty just to be nasty. That's what we have to control. But you have to be aware of it before you can civilize it. So that's the answer for that. Be aware, be conscious, be cognitive of your feelings. Don't adopt the feelings of other people who want you to feel a certain way. You know, you know, I was around them niggas today. See, now that little boy, he's gonna feel that way because he loves his father, and he hears his father talking like that, and now he thinks that's how he's supposed to feel about people he's never even met. Yeah, that's how that goes. So let us be conscious of that thing in us to want to be that way and do that way and think that way and feel that way. That's when you begin to earn mastery over that. I hope that was enough, Ahmed.
Instruction.
Yes.
Michael Hameen, Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes, sir. And this will be the last question. Go ahead.
You spoke earlier in terms of a trajectory or focus of excellence. Could you describe the effects of traumatizing events and circumstances that challenge that excellence, and how to meet that challenge?
Yes, sir. And it all goes back again to what I've established in today's discourse, and that is to not let Eve be the one in the control, in the driver's seat. Do not let, not even good emotions like love, and don't even go to the extreme in those, because you may end up giving that love to someone who's going to abuse you. So you have to be conscious of you. And trauma is definitely something that is beat very deeply into the psyche of the subconscious mind. So when you understand those three levels, Adam, Eve, serpent, as conscious mind, subconscious mind, unconscious mind, the trauma is taking place in the Eve department, the midsection. That's why the serpent appealed to her, because that's where the most damage can be done, to the midsection. You understand? If we were to look at it as the human body, Adam would be the head, Eve would be the torso with the heart, the lungs, and the serpent would be the generative organs. See, there's all kinds of ways of making these equations. So the trauma is not done to your ability to procreate. That's not always where the enemy of humanity wants to pigeonhole you. Let's just cut off the generations. Let's depopulate the earth. We've heard all of this, but that's not where their main concentration is. Their main concentration is on damaging the midsection. You see how Allah says in the Quran, and guard the middle salat? You think it's talking about a midday prayer only? No. All complications for human life appear in the midsection. Just like the Middle Ages is the most complicated of ages for any people's history, the Middle Ages. Just like in the individual's life, the midlife crisis. They call it, he turned 40, whatever, the midlife. It's always the middle. That's where the most egregious of activities can take place. So we have to concentrate on and the middle also represents the balance. So when you let people take you off of the balance, take you off of your equilibrium, and the only thing that can do that is your emotionality. If the rational mind is not helping the emotional mind to balance itself, we call it emotional equilibrium. Again, Allah says, Certainly, we have created the human being in the most excellent of organizational designs. The most excellent of organizational designs for you as an individual is your ability to stand up and balance yourself upon two legs. If you didn't have, if one of your legs was a little bit, an inch shorter, do you know how much of a problem you'd have just making it from A to Z? Walking, running. We've seen people with an imbalance. The one leg is longer, or a little bit shorter than the other, whatever, and they have to limp. Remember Michael Jackson's mother, Katherine Jackson? She had polio, and it caused her to have a limp. One of her legs, I think, got a little bit shortened or whatever, and that becomes difficult. So Allah created us for balance, is the point. So when you feel yourself becoming emotionally riled up and you know it's good, there's a tipping point, you have to be the one to pull back the reins and say, I'm not going to respond to that person's ignorance. Even if it's your wife or husband or children or parents, I am not going to respond. You see how Allah tells the child to respond to the parent in Surah 17? Even if they are idol worshipers. Allah says, keep good company with, right? He says, treat them with the most excellent treatment, ma'ruf. And he says, but just don't follow them in things that you're not familiar with or things that have not been sanctioned for you by God, but still keep good company with them. You see how Allah is encouraging us to keep the balance so that we don't lose our parental our relationship with our parents or our cousins or whoever, the grandparents. You Christian, I'm Muslim now, I can't eat at your house because you eat pork. That's foolishness. Just don't eat the pork. See, we don't look for the balance. We're always looking for some emotional out that puts us on Front Street so we can tell people that we're different than everybody else. I have to dress in a thobe and a turban and a khimar and cover half my face. You don't have to do all of that unless you want to do all of that. It's not about the external get up. It's about the internal properties that allow you to internally get up or rise to the occasion of human excellence is what we're talking about. So focus on the excellence. Don't focus on the emotional tirades and the people who are trying to push your buttons. You have to become you have to take the steering wheel into your hands and be the driver. Understood? I hope. Michael?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. So feel free to contact me. Anybody who's a part of this conversation tonight who was not invited directly by me, you're not going to have access to this replay unless you email me at that email address, cosmicquran1@gmail.com. If you email me, I will gladly, free of charge, send you the replay in both the webinar form as well as the audio form. So you can travel around, play it in your car, whatever. For those purposes. If I don't have your email address, I can't send it to you unless the person who invited you gives it to you. But some of you heard about tonight's call on Facebook and that kind of thing. You may not have my number. So make sure that you either call me, leave a message that you want to receive it, give me your email address, and you'll have it before the night is through, inshallah, God willing. Also, I'm going to include in the replay email a list of my books. I have 13 books out now that you may be interested in. And feel free, all of the prices will be attached and the ways to send the payments for the books, either through Cash App or PayPal, that will also be given in that that page that I attached to the email. And let's stay in touch. Feel free to contact me. As I said, I see my good friend Abdul Latif Amin back on the block. Alhamdulillah, we were making dua for him just a couple of weeks ago. He was under surgery. And also our Imam Muhammad Abdullah, who was also under surgery about a month ago. These are people who, in one measure or another, are back with us, and we appreciate their continued participation and support of what it is we do. He happens to be one who was with me almost from the beginning. He's been with me almost 30 years, Abdul Latif, back in Queens, Hollis, New York. So thank Allah for seeing his name in the queue. And we're going to close out with a short prayer from the Quran, which says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, with Allah's name, the merciful benefactor or the merciful redeemer. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. And that is our guardian, evolver, and sustainer. Give us the excellence of this life, the dunya, and give us the excellence of the next life, al-akhirah, and save us from the torment of the blazing fires of our misguided passions. And we say, Sadaqallahu al-Azim, Allah has spoken the mighty truth, as we greet you with the greetings of peace that obligate each and every one of us to keep the peace. And that is, Salamun alaykum. Thank you all for being a part of tonight's experience. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Alaikum assalam.
Assalam. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. All right.
People, much love. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah.
All right. Nazim, alhamdulillah, good to see you in the queue.
Alhamdulillah, brother.
Yeah, thank all of you for being present. Love you. Each and every one of you. Love you.
Love you much.
Yeah. My daughter Najat and her mom, good to see you in the queue.
Were you?
All of you.
I saw Ty in the queue for a minute. She got to work tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. So let me let you get your rest. Thank you for being with us once again.
Assalamu
Alaikum assalam. Thank you again for being with us. Good to see all of you.
Yes.
All right.